In Alejandro González Iñárritu's 2015 film The Revenant, the survivalist sequence centering on Hugh Glass, played by Leonardo DiCaprio, is a beautiful depiction of human endurance against the unforgiving American wilderness in the 1820s. Loosely based on the real-life frontiersman Hugh Glass's ordeal, this portion of the film begins after Glass is mauled by a grizzly bear and abandoned by his companions, John Fitzgerald, played by Tom Hardy, and Jim Bridger, played by Will Poulter. Thinking him near death, they bury him in a shallow grave and flee with his supplies. The sequence spans Glass's awakening and emergence from the grave through his harrowing journey across the frozen Great Plains, culminating in his use of a dead horse as shelter during a blizzard. This arc emphasizes raw survival instincts, blending historical inspiration with cinematic dramatization for emotional and visual impact. Let's have a look at the emergence from the grave. Glass, severely wounded with gashes across his body and a broken leg, regains consciousness buried under a thin layer of dirt. He digs himself out, his hand dramatically rising from the soil in a moment symbolizing rebirth. He crawls across the snowy terrain, dragging his injured body toward a nearby stream for water. Barely mobile, Glass sustains himself by eating berries, scraps from discarded animal carcasses, and raw fish caught by hand from the stream. He cauterizes his wounds using gunpowder and fire to prevent infection, a painful process shown in close-up detail. Hallucinations and dreams haunt him, including visions of his deceased Pawnee wife and son Hawk, providing psychological motivation amid physical agony. Glass meets a lone Pawnee man named Hickok, who aids him by building an impromptu sweat lodge from tree branches, grass, and Glass's bare pelt. Hickok packs the wounds with grassland, cauterizes them with burning cloth and snow, and shares food. During this recovery, Glass experiences vivid dreams, such as embracing a tree in a ruined Spanish mission, reinforcing his will to survive. This brief alliance ends tragically when Hickok is killed by French trappers. Continuing alone, Glass intervenes to save Pawaka, a Arikara woman, from rape by French trappers. He steals a horse and flees pursuing Arikara warriors. In a desperate move, he rides the horse off a cliff, crashing into a tree that cushions the fall but kills the animal. As a blizzard hits, Glass disembowels the horse, removes its organs, breaks its bones for easier access, strips naked, and climbs inside the carcass for warmth and protection. He spends the night cocooned in the animal's body cavity, emerging the next morning, dressing, and gently petting the horse's snout in a gesture of gratitude before pressing on. Glass's journey covers miles of tundra, involving crawling, floating down icy rapids to evade enemies, and enduring starvation and exposure. The total survivalist sequence explains Glass's survival through a combination of practical wilderness skills, psychological resilience, and opportunistic alliances, while highlighting the film's blend of fact and fiction. Historically, the real Hugh Glass was mauled by a bear in 1823 and abandoned without burial, crawling approximately 200 to 300 miles to Fort Kiowa over weeks, subsisting on berries, roots, and water without the film's added elements like the sun or native assistance. Glass prioritizes hydration by risking a cliff crawl to reach water, critical, as humans can survive only days without it, eats raw foods for energy, and uses improvised shelters like debris huts or the horse carcass to combat hypothermia. The sweat lodge scene draws from Native American practices for healing, using natural materials to seal wounds and promote recovery. Motivation stems from revenge or vengeance. Filmed in remote Canada and Argentina using only natural light, the crew endured extreme cold for authenticity, limiting shoots to short windows of daylight. Cinematographer Emmanuel Lubezki employed long takes, wide-angle lenses, and practical effects to immerse viewers. The sequence explores man's confrontation with nature's cruelty, reversing the man versus nature trope to nature versus man, where the wilderness is an indifferent inferno demanding constant adaptation. Vengeance drives Glass, but it leads to desolation, leaving him a tattered ghost, without redemption, questioning the cost of survival. From a Native American perspective, it critiques colonial plunder, portrayed as ecological destruction, and emphasizes communal identity. Glass's interactions with Hickok and Pawaka, a Native American woman, foster pantribal bonds, inverting stereotypes by portraying survival as interconnected rather than solitary. Proverbs underscore permanence and resilience, echoing native storytelling's blend of physical and metaphysical realms. Symbolically, the grave emergence represents death and rebirth, the sweat lodge a sacred healing ceremony rooted like a tree against storms, and the horse carcass a cocoon or inverted birth from the belly of the beast, blending brutality with gratitude toward nature. Dreams and visions, bison skulls symbolizing genocide, bending trees for unyielding resolve, layer time and loss, critiquing post-contact native traumas. The horse shelter, depicted as both grim and cozy in long shots, normalizes extreme acts, evoking caveman instincts. This sequence's power lies in its ability to blend awe with horror, making Glass's endurance feel miraculous yet dehumanizing, ultimately meditating on humanity's fragile place in an uncaring world. The dead horse scene, often referred to as the horse carcass shelter sequence, occurs midway through Hugh Glass's grueling odyssey of survival and revenge. After intervening to save a captive Arikara woman from French trappers, Glass steals a horse and flees from pursuing Arikara warriors. In a desperate escape, he rides the horse off a steep cliff into a snowy pine forest below. The horse perishes in the fall, its body impaled on branches, but Glass survives the crash. As a fierce blizzard descends, Glass disembowels the horse, removing its organs and breaking bones to create space. He strips naked, climbs inside the warm cavity of the carcass, and huddles there overnight for protection against the freezing temperatures. The next morning, he emerges bloodied and reborn-like from the animal's body, dresses, and tenderly pats the horse's snout in a gesture of gratitude before continuing his journey. The scene serves as illustrating extreme wilderness survival tactics while advancing the narrative of resilience and vengeance. Historically inspired but dramatized, it draws from frontier lore where trappers used animal carcasses for insulation against hypothermia, a practical method where body heat lingers in the cavity, potentially saving lives in sub-zero conditions. In the film, this follows Glass's bear mauling, abandonment, and encounters with native allies, marking his transition from near-death vulnerability to primal adaptation. It contrasts human ingenuity with nature's indifference, as Glass repurposes death, the horses, for life, evoking real survival stories like those of explorers in the 1820s American frontier. The film amplifies it for emotional intensity, symbolizing Glass's shedding of civilization to embrace animalistic instincts for revenge against John Fitzgerald, who killed his son and abandoned Glass in a shallow grave. The scene delves into the human psyche's capacity for resilience under extreme duress. Glass's act of entering the carcass represents a descent into primal regression, a Freudian return to the womb-like state amid post-traumatic stress from his mauling, son's murder, and betrayal. His isolation in the belly of the beast mirrors internal torment, blurring reality with survival-driven obsession. The emergence symbolizes cathartic rebirth, processing grief through embodied ritual. Vengeance fuels mental endurance, though at the cost of dehumanization. The scene interrogates and shows the human condition in a state of nature, where life is solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. Raw existence is thus revealed. Glass's use of the carcass embodies existential resilience as he asserts dominance over death to persist, questioning the meaning of survival without purpose. It critiques anthropocentrism, positing nature as an indifferent force that reduces man to animal equality. The rebirth motif philosophizes renewal through destruction, suggesting that true self emerges from confronting the void. Glass dies metaphorically to his civilized self, reborn with primal authenticity. This aligns with eco-philosophy, viewing the act as harmonious surrender to natural cycles, where man and beast intermingle in a pantheistic unity, challenging dualisms like mind and body or human and nature. The scene draws from human evolutionary adaptations to harsh environments, reflecting how early hunter-gatherers used animal remains for survival, as seen in Paleolithic practices of utilizing every part of a kill for tools, food, and shelter. It highlights biocultural evolution, where such tactics represent adaptive strategies against environmental pressures, akin to Inuit or Siberian indigenous methods of burrowing into animal hides during blizzards. In the film's context, it anthropologizes the frontier as a liminal space where Euro-American trappers adopt savage techniques, blurring cultural boundaries and critiquing colonial assumptions of superiority. Glass's gesture of gratitude to the horse echoes animistic worldviews, treating animals as kin with agency, underscoring humanity's interdependence with ecosystems rather than dominance. The scene incorporates elements of Native American survival lore, consulted during production for authenticity, such as Pawnee and Arikara practices of resourcefulness in the Great Plains. It portrays Glass's adoption of indigenous knowledge, through prior alliances like with the Pawnee healer Haikuk, as a form of cultural hybridity on the 1820s frontier, where trappers often integrated native techniques for endurance. This reflects ethnographic themes of acculturation and resistance, as the film critiques Eurocentric exploitation, for trade decimating ecosystems, while showing native perspectives on harmony with nature, where animals are revered rather than mere resources. The carcass use symbolizes cross-cultural exchange, but also appropriation, highlighting power imbalances in colonial encounters where survival depends on emulating marginalized groups. The scene evokes biblical motifs of resurrection and divine providence, likening the horse carcass to Jonah's whale, a dark, enclosing space for spiritual transformation and emergence into renewed purpose. Glass's naked rebirth parallels Christ's resurrection or Adam's creation, symbolizing redemption through suffering, as the film weaves Christian imagery, cruciform poses, with indigenous spirituality. It suggests a pantheistic theology where nature acts as God's instrument, testing faith and urging forgiveness over revenge, as hinted in Pawnee proverbs like, "Revenge belongs to the Creator." The act critiques vengeful theology, proposing that true divinity lies in surrendering to natural divine cycles, where death begets life, echoing eco-theology's view of creation as sacred and interconnected. The scene critiques the brutal individualism of frontier capitalism, where the fur trade's greed fosters abandonment and exploitation, reducing humans to survivalist actors in a lawless society. Glass's adoption of native methods critiques cultural imperialism, showing how marginalized knowledge sustains the oppressed. This sequence, culminating in Glass's night inside the horse carcass, invites a reading through biblical lenses, particularly the narratives of Jonah in the whale and Christ's resurrection from the grave. The descent into the belly of the beast parallels with Jonah and the whale theologically. Glass's entry into the horse's disemboweled carcass mirrors the biblical story of Jonah swallowed by the great fish, often translated as whale in popular imagination, as described in Jonah 1-2. In the Hebrew Bible, Jonah's 3-day entombment in the fish's belly is not mere punishment but a divinely ordained liminal space, a womb of death, where rebellion against God's call gives way to prayerful surrender and rebirth. Similarly, Glass, stripped naked and vulnerable, crawls into the steaming cavity of the horse amid a raging blizzard, his body enveloped in the animal's viscera as if consumed by a beast of the wilderness. This act is precipitated by his cliffside plunge, a self-inflicted swallowing born of desperation, evoking Jonah's flight from Nineveh only to be overtaken by divine storm, Jonah 1 verses 4-15. In theological terms, both narratives underscore katabasis, the mythic descent into the underworld or chaos, as a prerequisite for spiritual renewal. For Jonah, the fish's belly becomes a site of theophany, where he cries out from the depths of Sheol, Jonah 2 verse 2, acknowledging God's sovereignty over creation. Glass's belly is likewise a chaotic abyss. The horse, once a symbol of mobility and conquest in the colonial frontier, now reduced to a sacrificial vessel, its death enabling Glass's survival. The film's sound design, muffled winds, labored breaths, and the absence of dialogue, amplifies this as a contemplative void, akin to Jonah's psalmic lament, Jonah 2 verses 3-9, where isolation strips away illusions of self-sufficiency. This critiques human hubris. Just as Jonah's prejudice against Nineveh leads to his engulfment, Glass's vengeful pursuit, fueled by his son's murder, propels him into this primal tomb, forcing confrontation with mortality. The horse, in native traditions, is not mere chattel but a sacred companion, its sacrifice echoing animistic beliefs where animals offer themselves for human sustenance, as seen in Haikuk's earlier Aid to Glass. This pantheistic layer, God immanent in nature, expands Jonah's story. The whale is not punitive but providential, a manifestation of the Creator's mercy amid creation's indifference. Glass's tender pat on the horse's snout upon emerging gestures gratitude, akin to Jonah's vow of sacrifice, Jonah 2 verse 9, recognizing the divine in the profane. This posits suffering as a theodicy of growth. Evil, betrayal, loss, is not God's will but a catalyst for encountering the numinous, where even beasts become instruments of salvation. The scene invokes the paschal mystery, death's conquest through divine kenosis, self-emptying, as articulated in Philippians 2 verses 5 to 11. Glass, like Christ, undergoes a voluntary passion, his cliff jump a Gethsemane-like acceptance of suffering, culminating in entombment. The horse carcass, warm and womb-like, evokes the grave's darkness, where Christ's harrowing of hell, 1 Peter 3 verse 19, transforms death into a gateway to life. In patristic theology, Gregory of Nyssa, the resurrection signifies humanity's deification, shedding the old self for divine union. Glass sheds his clothes, symbolizing civilized identity, to enter naked, emerging transformed, his wounds a stigmata of endurance. This Christological parallel is heightened by the film's visual theology. The blizzard's white expanse mirrors the empty tomb's linen cloths, John 20 verses 6 to 7, while Glass's rebirth under natural light evokes the Easter dawn. However, Glass's resurrection is not glorious but grotesque, his survival marred by ongoing vengeance, contrasting Christ's forgiveness, Father, forgive them, Luke 23 verse 34. As the Pawnee proverb intones, revenge belongs to the Creator, Glass's path echoes Old Testament lex talionis but falters against New Testament grace. His resurrection is incomplete because Glass was not fully dead among other reasons. It's a perverted shadow of Christ's resurrection. Furthermore, the scene theologizes incarnation and ecology. Christ's resurrection redeems creation, Romans 8 verses 19 to 23, groaning under sin's curse. Glass's merger with the horse blurs human-animal boundaries, suggesting a sacramental view where matter, flesh, blood, mediates the divine. In liberation theology, Gustavo Gutierrez, suffering among the marginalized reveals God's preferential option for the poor. Glass, a frontiersman with Pawnee ties, embodies the oppressed, his survival a prophetic witness against colonial exploitation. The horse's death, like Christ's, is Eucharistic. This is my body, given for you, Luke 22 verse 19, its cavity a chalice of lifeblood sustaining Glass through the storm. The dead horse scene probes the enigma of divine providence in a fallen world. Like Jonah's storm-tossed ship or Christ's forsaken cry, Matthew 27 verse 46, Glass's ordeal questions God's presence amid chaos. Is the horse's fall accidental or ordained? Process theology, Alfred North Whitehead, might see God as persuasive rather than coercive, luring creation toward wholeness through suffering's crucible. The scene affirms this: nature's brutality, blizzard, wilderness, is not malevolent but a theater for divine encounter, where Glass's will aligns with cosmic rhythms. Jonah emerges to prophesy, Christ to reconcile, Glass to confront betrayal, yet the film ends ambiguously, suggesting true resurrection lies in relinquishing revenge. Revenge is not the Christ's way. Hatred linked to violence is a force which needs to be converted. In a post-secular age, it invites viewers to ponder, in our own bellies of despair, be it personal loss or ecological crisis, does God whisper through the storm, calling us to rebirth not for self, but for the other's sake? This allegory thus bridges ancient scripture with contemporary existentialism, affirming that from death's depths, life, divine, wild, and unyielding, persists. In a desperate bid for survival, Glass uses a dead horse as an improvised shelter by gutting it and crawling inside naked. The core idea is leveraging the animal's residual body heat, insulating blubber, fat, muscle layers, and windproof hide to create a microenvironment that traps warmth against hypothermia. It's not comfortable, it's messy and foul-smelling, but in a life-or-death scenario with no other options, no fire, tools, or materials, it beats freezing solid. Smaller animals like rabbits won't cut it for full-body shelter. Key factors for success include the animal being freshly dead, to retain heat, the external temperature being sub-zero with high winds, making exposure fatal otherwise, and your own physical condition, no open wounds that could get infected from bacteria. It's a short-term fix, aim for 1 night max, while you regroup for extraction or better shelter. I'll break it down technically and pragmatically. Adapt to your ethics and local laws, and if not absolutely needed, don't practice, don't try. Glass has probably succeeded in considering 3 steps. Step 1, assessing and preparing the site, pre-gutting pragmatics. The horse was dead and fresh. He didn't kill it. Don't kill. Don't kill animals. Rigor mortis hasn't set in yet, so the body is pliable and warm, internal temp around 100 degrees Fahrenheit per 38 degrees Celsius initially. If it's been dead hours, heat loss makes it less effective, move on if possible. Roll or drag the horse onto its back or side in a low spot sheltered from wind, a depression, or against a rock. This prevents blood and organ spillage from rolling back on you and makes access easier. In a storm, work fast, hypothermia sets in minutes if you're exposed. Tools needed, ideally a sharp knife, Glass uses his. No knife. Improvise with a sharp rock, bone shard, or broken glass. Gloves if available to avoid frostbite on hands. Strip naked before gutting if your clothes are wet, soiled, as glass does. Wet fabric wicks heat away 25x faster than air. Dry skin against warm innards is better. Bundle clothes inside your pack or under snow to keep them dry for later. And now step 2. Step 2, technically emptying the horse, gutting process. Create a hollow cavity big enough for a human, about 5 to 6 feet long, 2 to 3 feet wide internally for a horse. A horse weighs 800 to 1,200 pounds, with organs, guts comprising 10 to 15% of that, 80 to 180 pounds to remove. The goal, evacuate the abdominal and thoracic cavities without puncturing the intestines, which release feces and bacteria, or damaging the hide, your roof. Work methodically to minimize mess and energy expenditure. You're likely injured and exhausted like Glass. Initial incision. Start at the anus, vent, with a shallow cut, 1 to 2 inches deep, using the knife tip. Slice upward along the midline belly toward the chest, stopping at the sternum, breastbone. Length, 3 to 4 feet for a horse. Keep the cut shallow to avoid nicking organs. If no knife, tear with hands after a starter cut, messy but doable on soft tissue. Opening the cavity, peel back the hide and muscle layers like unzipping a sleeping bag. Use your hands or knife to separate the peritoneum, thin membrane lining the abdomen. This exposes the intestines, stomach, liver, etc. In cold weather, steam will rise from the warmth, that's your heat source. Removing the guts. Reach in and sever the diaphragm, muscle separating chest from abdomen, with a knife or by tearing. Cut the esophagus, trachea at the neck end and the rectum at the anus end to free the entire gut tract. Pull, scoop out in one go, grab the intestines and yank downward/outward. For a horse, this might require rolling the body or using leverage, tie a rope to the guts and pull. Dump the pile away to avoid attracting predators. Remove heart, lungs, liver, kidneys next, they're looser. Scoop with hands if needed, expect blood, up to 10 to 15 gallons in a horse, let it drain downhill. Clean out residue. Scrape the cavity walls with your knife and hands to remove blood clots, fat scraps, and membranes. Leave some fat layers intact for insulation. Total time, 10 to 20 minutes if efficient, longer if solo and injured. Common pitfalls to avoid: don't puncture the bladder, urine spill, or stomach, acid and vomit. If you do, rinse with snow, water if available, but in a storm, just deal survival over sterility. The cavity should now be a hollow, bloody tube from hindquarters to chest. In the film, Glass does this solo in agony, which highlights pragmatism, prioritize speed over perfection. Realistically, blood will freeze quickly in sub-zero temps, reducing slipperiness. And now step 3. Step 3, entering and surviving the night inside. Once gutted, the horse becomes a natural, sleeping bag, with these properties: insulation, the hide blocks wind, up to 50 to 60 miles per hour in a blizzard, and subcutaneous fat and muscle retains heat for 4 to 8 hours as it cools slowly. Heat retention, your body heat, 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit, warms the enclosed space, creating a 40 to 60 degrees Fahrenheit microclimate even if outside is minus 20 degrees Fahrenheit with wind chill. Why naked? Clothes trap moisture from sweat, snow, leading to conductive heat loss. Skin-to-carcass contact transfers heat efficiently without that barrier. If partially clothed, keep dry layers on extremities, socks if dry. Crawl and feet first through the belly incision, easier to seal behind you. Curl into fetal position to minimize airspace and maximize contact with warm tissues. Pull the incision flaps closed over your head, use snow or branches to weigh them down if needed. In the film, Glass seals it somewhat, trapping air. Internal management. Breathe shallowly, the space is confined, like a coffin, but oxygen seeps in through gaps. CO2 buildup is minimal for one night. Stay still to conserve energy, metabolic heat is your furnace. Eat snow for hydration if thirsty, melt in mouth to avoid chilling core. Monitor body temp, shiver. Good, it's generating heat. Numbness. Shift position to recirculate blood. Duration, aim for 6 to 12 hours until storm passes. Exit at dawn to avoid overheating as the carcass cools fully or attracts scavengers, bears, wolves. Risk mitigation. Infection, raw tissue harbors bacteria. Wash wounds post-exit, antibiotics if available in your kit. Predators, the smell draws them, have a weapon ready upon exit. Psychological toll, it's grotesque and claustrophobic. Mental toughness is key, focus on survival mantras. Exit strategy, push out through the incision. Redress immediately in dry clothes to prevent shock. Pragmatic survivalist takeaways. This beats digging a snow cave, which requires tools and energy, or huddling exposed, certain death in a blizzard. Efficacy. Historical accounts, Lewis and Clark expedition, report 80 to 90% survival boost in extreme cold. Don't test or test it only if it's a kind of necessity for you. Test it ethically and only very well prepared like a specialist and with a specialist very well trained only, and if the possibility appears. This is not something which can be provoked. Practice gutting on legal game hunts to build skills, not on random animals. Or, and it's better, consider modern survival, prioritize prevention and do not try to do like Hugh Glass did, unless it's an absolute necessity. Stay pragmatic, survival is mindset and technique.